In the following 3 videos, I'm going to show 3 sample questions that I have built for you. I selected these because they are a good example of the tougher types of questions you'll see on the real exam. So let's go through the first one now. A customer is having trouble using Wi-Fi calling on a mobile phone at home. Cellular calls work fine, and internet access through Wi-Fi also works at home. At work, the user can successfully make Wi-Fi calls. You have narrowed the problem down to the Wi-Fi router. Which of the following should you perform first? Let's take a look at the potential answers. A. Enable IPsec pass-through. B. Disable the SPI firewall. C. Enable the RTSP ALG. Or D. Set up a virtual server with port forwarding. Now, this is a long question. It's paragraph-oriented. It's scenario-oriented. And so it's a bit of an example of a tougher question that you might see. So this is something that you might need to read through a couple times before you select the answer. Pause the video now and read through it again, and then choose the best answer, and unpause the video when you're ready for the correct answer. And the correct answer is A, enable IPsec pass-through. You should attempt to enable IP security pass-through on the wireless router. If you're working at a phone and you have set up Wi-Fi calling and it's enabled on that phone, the smartphone will build an application-specific IP security VPN tunnel that goes out to the carrier network. Your router simply passes those packets through as long as that IPsec pass-through function is enabled, and passes that through to your provider, your ISP. Authentication between the phone and the provider happens automatically, and the VPN tunnel is transparent to the user. Now, in addition to this, you should check the smartphone, and you want to make sure that Wi-Fi calling is enabled. But that's not necessary in this scenario, because it says that Wi-Fi calling performs properly at the user's workplace. Those Wi-Fi calls are working. You never know what kind of setup there is. There might be a BYOD setup where there's different configurations, or perhaps the user disabled Wi-Fi calling while at home, or an app disabled it at the actual smartphone. So you should always check that and make sure that Wi-Fi calling is turned on, but it most likely is, because at work, the user can successfully make those Wi-Fi calls. So let's show an actual router and the setting for IPsec pass-through. And we'll go to this basic router here. We'll go down to security and basic security. And you'll see the setting is here, IPsec pass-through, and it is enabled. I've personally seen this several times with customers where it was disabled on the router and the customer could not make Wi-Fi calls, even though it was turned on at the smartphone. So it had to be enabled at the router. Now, it's very important to know what the correct answer is and why, and be able to work within that scenario. But it's also important to know why the incorrect answers are incorrect. So let's go through those. First, answer B says disable the SPI firewall. SPI stands for Stateful Packet Inspection. And disabling a firewall is usually not a good idea because it will leave ports open. So let's look at that on our router. You'll see here the SPI firewall is indeed enabled. If it was disabled, you'd probably want to enable this at a customer, at a home office, or a customer's home. And you'll see here it says Stateful Packet Inspection helps to prevent cyber attacks, and that's what we want. So normally you want to make sure that that is enabled, not disabled. The next answer, enable the RTSP ALG. Lots of acronyms in the computer world, and you're going to see lots of acronyms in the CompTIA A+ exams. Well, first, RTSP stands for Real-Time Streaming Protocol. And sometimes this, as well as SIP, Session Initiation Protocol, might have to be enabled if you're dealing with multimedia clients. If we take a look back at our router here, we will see RTSP ALG and SIP ALG are both disabled right now. And to be honest with you, my smartphones and tablets work fine through this device doing any type of multimedia. By the way, ALG stands for Application Layer Gateway. You'll usually get descriptions of these various protocols and what they do. But RTSP and SIP have to do with multimedia clients working with streaming servers and being able to stream information directly to devices on the network. Again, not really needed here and not needed for Wi-Fi calling. And finally, set up a virtual server with port forwarding. Now, a virtual server could be used to forward specific ports. And while it might help here, it's unlikely that you would have to configure that. If we look back at our router and we go to the forwarding section over here, you'll see you have the option to make a virtual server. You could add a new virtual server, and you'd have to specify the ports that you want to open and the IP address of the system that that server is working with. You could also select common service ports like DNS or FTP or POP3 and so on. And this way you could use virtual servers to forward specific ports and packets of information on your network. But again, not required in this particular scenario. The thing that we're most concerned with here is Wi-Fi calling. And to make that happen, we make sure, first of all, Wi-Fi calling is enabled on the phone, but then we also turn on IPsec pass-through. We enable that at the router so that our IPsec VPN tunnel can be created properly between the phone and the provider. So that's it for the first question. Take a look at it again and make sure you understand all the concepts. Not only why the correct answer is correct, but why the incorrect answers are incorrect. And if you're wondering about Wi-Fi calling, research that a little bit more as well.